are used for the budget. The solid waste stabilization fund, I mentioned we're going to use half of it to balance the budget. Stickney Well Fund, we're not going to use any of it. Cell Tower Fund, we're going to use $200,000 of it to balance the budget, but we're still going to have a balance of $151,000, and the number is going to grow. So that number is what today's number is, but it grows as time goes on. And when we're here a year from now, we'll be able to still tap into this number to balance next year's budget. And then town-owned land. You'll remember the Board of Selectmen sold some land. I think it was back in September. I want to thank Mr. DeColo who stood in for me then. So we brought in a little bit of money. We're going to use it for our budget. And then the last piece of the reserves is overlay surplus, $87,000, and we're going to use that to fund a small snow deficit that we have for this year. So that's the scenario in terms of where we stand cash-wise. What do we do to balance the budget? These are all the things that we did to balance the budget. The first piece is cuts that we made. The bottom part is what are the major drivers of the budget. There are 4 major drivers of the budget, and I guess I want to talk about those first because I think it's most relevant and critical to understand what are the major cost items. First of all, we had a cost of living increase, 3%. So all of our employees, we funded our cost of living obligations. But that's boring stuff. The important stuff is we have a major effort put forth by Chief Murphy to increase staffing in his department by adding 2 officers and a lieutenant detective position. As a result of that, we're going to be making some reductions in our reserve cost. So we've identified and isolated what those costs are. We've identified it as a major driver of the budget. Our employee benefits budget is going up by $220,000. Health insurance, yep, it's going up. County retirement, yep, that's going up too, and Medicare. Those are probably the major items that we see in our cost drivers and employee benefits, but that number is a lot smaller than what it's been in the past. In the past, that number has gobbled up probably upwards of almost $1 million. And then there's some other things that we want to try to do in this budget, and we're proposing here. Increasing staffing in the Information Services Department, adding a new position at $55,000. We have some ambitious plans, and we need staffing in that department. It's been neglected too long. And then we're planting the seeds for our ALS program to the tune of $144,000. It's not to hire people. It's basically to provide that we have people who are properly trained within the department that will be able to assume the duties as paramedics when the program becomes up and fully running. On the top piece, cuts that we had to make. And none of them are pleasant, and everyone has advocates, and I'm sympathetic to the fact that you got to cut the budget somewhere. We eliminated merit increases in our vacation buybacks. That's $95,000. We deferred all of our small capital to October, which is almost $57,000. We reduced certain cost items in the DPW budget, particularly with regard to increasing the snow and ice budget, and those cost reductions total $376,000. We reduced our legal expenses by $22,000. We reduced our property and liability insurance by $16,500. We deferred a stipend for the paramedics to a later date. That's a savings of $32,000, and we made one salary adjustment in the budget to the tune of $8,867. I just wanted to mention that because every time someone leaves service, what we do is we true up the budget. So someone goes out at a higher rate, someone comes in at a lower rate, we adjust our numbers, and that's a job that the finance department does. Okay. In summary, what are the key budget actions? Key budget actions are we have a proposed balance budget of $52,135,226. It's balanced to available funds. The schools have a little bit of work to do on their side, but they're very close to getting their budget balanced also. The budget funds all of our contractual obligations, and it represents all of our settlements that we have with our unions. We have 7 labor contracts on the town side. All of those contracts are settled due to efforts of the Board of Selectmen over the last year. I mentioned to you the budget uses an amount of reserves from free cash in the debt stabilization fund to balance. That's necessary. The debt stabilization fund is not new, the free cash is. But what we're doing is using surpluses in the current year budget to rebuild these reserves. So What you'll see is at special town meeting, we'll be putting money into these reserve accounts, and at the annual town meeting, we'll be voting some of that money out. Not all of it, some of it. The budget supports critical public safety initiatives, and that's including the police lieutenant detective position, 2 officers, and it begins the ramping up of our ALS program in the fire department. And then lastly, it adds staffing in the information technology department necessary for expansion of our current programs, but also some new initiatives that we have on the table. So those are the major portions of the budget, and I would be happy to answer any questions at this time. Thank you.
Put the lights back on. Greg, just for information, on the $46,000 that the school budget was shot at our last financial planning team meeting, the state budget that's proposed that we're using has an increase in the circuit breaker. I think it's from 62 to 68%. And that's about a $40,000 increase, Cal Nelson mentioned. So in reality, the school budget gap, assuming all the budget gets approved, the state budget gets approved, should be even less than the $46,000. Should be around 9 or so.
Good news.
I have a question.
Mr. Prisco.
Will you have the reduced DPW cost items, $376,000? Was that from, we're actually reducing $376,000 from the operating budget that we had last year, or is that from the request of increases from the DPW director?
Correct. It was the requested increases the Public Works Director had.
Okay, so we're not making any reductions in the DPW?
No, we're reducing.
Okay.
Reducing his request, should we say.
Reduce your request, okay.
Yes.
But it's not the way it is with every one of those line items, it's just really with his, right? Because in legal costs, we didn't increase it by 21 in our
Yeah,
least proposed.
actually, all of those up there are, the paramedic stipend is handled much in the same way as the DPW. In other words, that's something that we're just not funding, but the others actually represent cuts.
Okay, thank you for explaining that.
Yeah, and as you recall, the legal budget, for example, our spending is way down.
Yep.
Mr. Yule.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With regarding the solid waste fund, you adjusted the revenue for 2013 to $59,325, if I'm reading that correctly. Is that from the recycling committee savings that they've been able to accumulate through the year?
I think to a great extent it is.
Okay.
It's not, so you can't say that it's not 100% due to that,
Right.
but it's due to the fact that our expenses are traditionally will drop as recycling rates go up.
Okay, and then in the sanitation revenue, I'm not sure if I understand that. What does this sanitation revenue come from? I thought that.
You're talking about the $15,000 that's there?
Yeah,
That is fee revenue that we receive, that typically 100% of it goes into the solid waste budget. What we're doing is we're taking $15,000 of that fee revenue out and applying it to the public works budget, not necessarily or solely the sanitation budget. And that action then frees up $15,000 in budget money to be allocated elsewhere.
okay.
But you should amplify the justification for that is that there's our administrators are using some of their time
I think
to manage that
5%
service.
is a conservative number. If you ask the Public Works Director, does he spend 5% of his time on solid waste? Or the staff that's in the office? The staff that's in the office spends a great percentage of their time dealing with solid waste and sanitation issues. In the past, we've never back-charged those expenses to the fee. And this year, we're doing a little bit of that.
And I still have another question. With regard to the cash reserves, with the Stickney Well and the MBTE funds, I'm not sure, maybe Mark can give us the current quote on what the estimated revenue is going to be for the year. I think that money is going to go back into these funds.
Yeah, I'll let the Public Works Director respond to that question.
The last estimate is $244,000.
The $244,000, is this in here right now?
No, that's prior, it's separate. The 244 is for FY12, the estimated closeout at the end of the year.
Okay, will that roll back in, and I guess this is for Greg, I mean,
Not directly, Jeff, in October, when we know what the number is, we will have to have an article to transfer all of it or some amount of it. We may want to
Yeah.
keep some in retained earnings in the water enterprise fund.
so that money's not recognized
It's
at
not
this point,
recognized at all,
and it won't be, it'll be thrown into an account and then used.
because we don't know what the
October.
final amount
October
is until.
Has
the
to,
end of
has
the
to
year.
be, has to be certified by the Department of Revenue,
understand.
similar to certification of free cash. Once the balance sheet gets submitted, it gets certified by DOR as retained earnings, as the chairman mentioned, it can then be voted out at an article at town meeting in the fall.
Thank you.
Any questions from the audience, from our department heads? Yes.
I have a question.
Can you go to the microphone just to help?
And identify himself.
Jim DeCola, building inspector. I'm also the president of the NUE, the Non-Employees Union, employees. And I have a question on the elimination of the merit increases in buybacks. If all the contracts have been settled, how can we then eliminate the merit increases in buybacks, the vacation buybacks?
Mr. Belliconis?
Merit increases are discretionary, so in my judgment, when economic times are difficult, we ask people to pull up their bootstraps and do the best they possibly can and cooperate with us. So we don't simply have money to be able to fund merit increases, Jim. On the buybacks, that's vacation buyback, not sick leave. So that's vacation, which is, we want people to use their vacation time. So people have between now and December of this year to utilize their vacation time. We do not presently have the money to be able to afford to pay that. We're not taking away anyone's vacation time. What we're saying to them is, use it, because we don't have the money to be able to pay it. Next year in this situation, when we sit down and we try to balance the budget, we'll make it a priority to try to pay those things.
Any other questions? Mrs. Bailey?
Good evening. Marcy Bailey, 21 Duane Drive. I was just curious, Mr. Valiakonis, you said that the capital stabilization fund will be left with a larger balance than what you're taking out. Could you tell us where the monies are coming from to go into the account? Sure. Thank you.
As I mentioned before, the present balance in the capital stabilization fund is $485,764. So we propose the following transfers at special town meeting. From employee benefits, the sum of $300,000. From cell tower revenue, $200,000. From property and liability insurance, $119,000. From supplemental state aid, $108,588. From town-owned land, $11,690. That will give us a balance, all those numbers added together, $1,225,042. We'll take out $600,000 at town meeting, which will leave us a balance of $625,042 to close the year and start the new fiscal year.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, I think so.
You want him to read it one more time?
No, so is some of the, when you accounted for some of the funds being used in the budget, are they both, like the cell tower revenue that's going in,
Right.
is that then